Hi, Ed.
Hello there.
How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine. Hi, Jim.
Chris, how are you doing? Ed, how are you?
Hanging in there.
It's a beautiful day to be inside, huh?
I haven't even been outside yet, so
Me neither, other than between the car and the building this morning, but I heard 70 degrees. Sounds pretty good for this time in March.
that's right.
So Ed, you'll appreciate this, but our last in-person meeting was a year ago today.
Wow.
So we met on Tuesday, which was our normal meeting, second Tuesday, and I think it was that Friday that everything just shut down. Thursday night, the governor's order happened. Friday, the city county passed executive orders, and Friday, I don't think we came to work.
Wow.
And it was only supposed to be 2 or 3 weeks, right?
That's right. Yeah, just a couple weeks.
Flatten the curve, 2 or 3 weeks, well, I'll be back. Here we are, it's a year later. Happy anniversary.
Yeah.
We had a full response for attendance today, so I'm expecting everybody else eventually. There's Jay. Welcome, Jay.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Jay. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Hello.
There we go. There's Addison coming in.
Hello.
Welcome, Addison. Can you hear us?
Hey, get the lighting right here.
So that's a little better.
We thought you were trying to make a statement or something.
The dark shadow.
Be
Giving
so,
up
yeah.
that beautiful view of the parking garage across the way there.
Yeah, that's my view every day.
I love it. All right. Well, you do have quorum, Mr. Chair, if you want to embark. Adrian responded yes, but don't see him on here yet.
Okay. When he gets here, he'll jump right in.
Sure.
So I call the meeting to order. So do we have anyone from the public who would like to make a comment? I'm not seeing any.
Doesn't look like it.
We will move on to the consent agenda then. So we have the minutes from the December 8th meeting and the treasurer's reports for November, December, and January. So the one thing I noticed in the minutes, it looked like one of the years was off the bottom of the page. It said June 30, 2010. So I think it should be 2020.
We'll track that down and make that correction.
All right. So we'll do the minutes first, I guess. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes with the correction?
I'll move.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Okay. So then we also, in the materials, have the treasurer's reports. So does anybody have any questions or about those?
Yeah,
Jim?
Ed, I've just got a quick question. Chris, on the contract, you may have mentioned this in an earlier meeting. I'm sorry if you did. Contractual services, I see there's like a $50,000 budgetary line for that. What is that? On expenditures?
Let's see, what month are you looking at there? We probably had a grant payment that was made.
Like November, it's like the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, it's in the year-to-date column. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been a grant payment to, it could have been either for, it was probably for the Business Equity Fund, which is managed by CIC, and we would have, in that amount, that is likely what that was. Trish, are you recalling? You know, she's got audio, but she's
Okay.
I could
that's
look it
fine.
up. I can look it up really quick if you need me to.
Yeah, go ahead. It's
Okay.
probably the contribution for the Business Equity Fund.
All right, let me check.
Okay.
And that round amount, but sometimes that's where items that don't have a convenient spot in the convenient category,
Okay.
that's where finance ends up parking them.
Okay.
We often have to scratch our memory to remember exactly what it was for.
All right. Thanks.
Sure.
It was the Community Investment Collaborative Business Equity Fund donation number 5 on October 22nd for $50,000.
Yeah, that's what that is. So that actually relates to part of the meeting today. When we go over the budget, last year, you all did an emergency kind of allocation, and we allotted additional funds to the equity fund, and that was the second delivery of those funds from last March.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions about the treasurer's reports? So do I have a motion to accept the 3 months of treasurer's reports?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Takes care of that. Now we have our new business.
Yes, so before we get to the budget, we'll do a few program updates. These will be brief. We did have some COVID-19 pandemic updates for you all, I think maybe November, December timeframe on a series of programs. So some of these will sound a little familiar. And others we didn't touch on quite as much at that point. But Jason's with us today. He's going to provide an overview of the ACE/GRACE program, which he's overseen for some time, and the Go Higher program as well. So Jason, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Jason Ness with the business development manager for the city. Just want to give a couple quick updates on 2 programs. The first is the ACE program, and that's stands for Advancing Charlottesville Entrepreneurs. That's been around. It's about to start its 9th year in the new fiscal year. The overall mission is broad but yet succinct. It's to help city businesses increase revenue. We've to date served well over 200 businesses. The prior, I guess, pre-COVID format has changed over the years, but for the last several years, we've been able to include CETA board members in it. And I know Ed has been on the committee, but the way it would work is we would award 12 $1,500 grants each quarter, or excuse me, in the year. So we'll award 3 each quarter. It was a 2-phase, 2-part application process. Businesses would fill out a simple application that would be screened by our staff. We would invite folks to come in for an interview with 3 CETA board members, and then we would make decisions on the awards and the grants given out. As we looked at the applications and the decision making, and Ed, please, join in. We were just looking at what would have an immediate impact, and I think over the years we developed a pretty good pipeline and communication system to identify businesses where $1,500 would really make a difference, and they could request anything from equipment to marketing or any type of other technical support. It was really intended to help businesses enhance current revenue streams or develop new ones. But since COVID hit, obviously the in-person interviews went away, but we were able to adjust pretty quickly and turn ACE into BRACE, which is the building resiliency among Charlottesville entrepreneurs. That was a up to $2,000 grant for businesses that we launched in the end of March 2020. Businesses could apply for assistance with fixed costs, but also, I think, and more importantly, the ability to adjust and adapt their business to COVID. While the grants were up to $2,000, I think the average award was around $1,000, and we were able to serve almost 80 businesses through the BRACE program. We are in the process of following up with each business that received a grant, and in talking with them and the business owners. The BRACE grant was the smallest grant our business offered, but I think it has been the most impactful. We were able to kind of quickly and nimbly, I guess, move at the end of March to get this program up and running and get the grants out the door when businesses, I think, need it most. And so talking with business owners, they were just, I think, extremely relieved to kind of feel that support from our office, but also to get, the monetary support as well. And then to switch over to Go Hire. Go Hire is now going into its 7th year. The program is kind of a blend of business development and workforce development. We've served well over 100 businesses in that program. There's 2 tracks with Go Hire. The first is for city-based businesses that are looking to hire. If they hire a city resident at a self-sufficient wage, we can reimburse 50% of those wages for 8 weeks. So it's roughly $2,400 if it's a $15 an hour job. The second track is for businesses that have existing workforce. If the business owner or employees identify a training that would help the business become more efficient, and the employee gains skills that could lead to a wage increase, promotion, or both, we can pay for that training. Over the years, we've done everything from how to upsell HVAC cold calls training for city businesses to coffee roasting schools and blacksmith schools. And so it's really up to the business owner to identify the training that would be most beneficial. During COVID, we didn't necessarily come up with a catchy name, but we called it COVID Go Hire and changed the criteria just a little bit. Businesses could apply for up to $5,000 to retain, rehire, or hire staff. The timing of this grant was right around April, so it was just before the first PPP came out. So it was, I think, at a pretty critical time for businesses that were trying to retain some key staff. We were able to serve 30 businesses through that program as well. And just to kind of, summarize, I realize, 3 of you are new, and Ed's been on the board for a while. And I know that, in talking with CETA members, you guys are at such kind of a high level and don't necessarily see the impacts of what you all are deciding or doing. But I think both of these programs through COVID have allowed us as staff to kind of move and maneuver as we see fit to help businesses. And talking with well over 100 businesses, without these grants, many businesses I think would have been in a lot worse shape, and I think some would have closed, according to the business owner. So I know that you guys sometimes are a little higher flyers than on the ground, but just know that the work of SETA does trickle down and have a pretty impactful impact on the business community. So happy to answer any questions. If not, thank you again for the support, and I'll turn it over to Chris.
Jason, how do the companies or the businesses find you guys, and it's all on them to apply for the grant money, or are you targeting certain people, or how does it work for the most part?
Well, I think it kind of two different ways. Pre-COVID was we relied a lot on our kind of business outreach program to talk about, especially Go Hire with business. We go in and visiting businesses and talking about their needs, and then talking about the services we offered. And then with ACE, like I mentioned, I think we had, especially working with groups like CIC, have developed a pretty good network a pretty good network to help businesses identify businesses where that $1,500 could have a pretty sizable impact. And then throughout COVID, it's been mostly just email blasts and social media, and just trying to get the word out as much as possible. I think Charlottesville does a pretty good job with its business owners of sharing information. So we did see a lot of referrals from other folks as far as trying to get applications. And I heard this from so-and-so, and can you provide more information?
Cool, thanks.
Of course.
All right. Thank you, Jason. So I'll move on with a couple other updates, starting with the SEville Match, which is one of our newer programs. We've been doing it a couple of years. It now includes, we renamed it. It used to be just simply called the BJIP Match, but now it's called SEville Match, and it includes BJIP, which is a state program that encourages existing companies to add capital investment and add employees. And we basically do a dollar-for-dollar match locally for those companies. We had a string of years where we had a number of BJIP applicants that were successful. The last couple of years, we have not had too many. Part of that is due to the funding at the state level was diminished for a year or two. It's now in this budget that's being passed now back up to that new level. And we expect we might see some more in there. It's a little bit cyclical, but SEville Match includes the former BJIP Match program, but it also includes what we have as a match for companies that have succeeded in getting a federal SBIR or STTR grant, which are fairly significant hurdles to get through, or a CRCF, which is a state commercialization fund grant that is administered by CIT. So we found over the years that there were a number of those type of companies that would launch in and around Charlottesville, given the fact that the university is proximate, and wanted to try and help them be more successful. And so part of this match helps them get off the ground as they're launching, but it takes the due diligence of figuring out whether they have a worthy concept off of our plate, and we leverage the fact that the federal agency that is issuing the SBIR, STTR has done all that work. So fairly successful in this program. We've got 6 folks in it. 5 are in their second year. We added one this year by the name of Lumen, an energy, high-tech energy-related company in the energy space. So they're our only new add this year. We do have 2 prospects in the queue that might make it in 2021. So we'll hope that they do make it. In essence, we survey these folks at the beginning, the middle, and then the end of the program, which is a 2-year time horizon. And we ask about employees and wages and capital investments. And they all have indicated collectively, as a group of 6, that they were going to be adding, I think, about 72 employees, increasing wages somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 to $10 an hour, and collectively capital investment of about $17 million was to be expected. as they end the program, we'll verify those and see how they did. But those were their projections upon entering. That's a quick summary of the SEville match program as it stands today. And as we get to the budget, you'll see recommended continuing the program, but we've adjusted the amount a little bit given the fact that COVID has likely dampened the startup vibe a little bit with regard to people in the cycle of applying for and receiving an SBIR, STTR type thing. So you'll see that. Moving on to the Business Equity Fund, which a question was asked about earlier. This was started by the City Council about 3 years ago at the initiative of one of the councilors. It is a fund parked at CIC, which is the Community Investment Collaborative. They administer the funds for us, make the loans, collecting the loans, etc. It's intended to be a revolving loan fund, and CETA has put $150,000 in that over the last couple of years to match the city dollars. And so we're now at the point where funds are actually revolving. During COVID, we tweaked some of the parameters and kind of called it the Business Equity Fund Recovery portion. We had 15 referrals and 13 applicants, eventually receiving 12 loans of $60,000 as part of the recovery piece. As part of the general fund prior to COVID, we've had 15 loans made, totaling a little over $140,000. And there's, let's see, about $85,000 in the fund to lend, as well as an expectation that that revolving component is now actually starting to happen. And so in our reports that we get from CIC, we request the amount expected to revolve. And in the next 6 months, about $42,000 is expected to come back into the fund that can then be re-lent. So that's a good sign. Nobody is in default at this point. During COVID, there were a couple requests to defer, and those requests were granted. The general terms of the loans are up to $25,000. Most loans are much less than that. They range from $1,500 to $25,000. The interest rates are 1 to 3%. Most are at about 1 or 2%, and they can use the funds for inventory, equipment, debt, working capital, things like that. So that has been successful, and I probably should have said at the beginning that the Business Equity Fund is intended for socially disadvantaged individuals, business owners that meet that criteria, and CIC has been very helpful in administering that, and you all have been supportive in helping capitalize that so that it can actually revolve, which is the point of the fund to begin with. So pretty good news there. Lastly, Go Virginia is a state program that's been around a few years. The state has put a fair amount of money into this program, and that's been helpful. It's intended to encourage regional collaboration, and therefore every grant that the state makes requires local participation. So all the localities throughout the state, and certainly in this area, have gotten on board various and supported various programs that have been granted Virginia dollars. And a few years ago, we started to allocate a portion of our budget to have a little bit of funds available to support these as they come along. The two big ones that you all are probably familiar with are SEville BioHub, which was the first one that we supported, the first one that came to us, and that is an initiative to kind of grow the life science sector here locally. And they've done a good job. They're just about through their 2-year cycle. They have delivered education and networking opportunities. Typically in a year we'll have 6 or so of those. Those have been virtual this past year. They started an entrepreneur in residence program with the licensing and ventures group at UVA. So they have an individual that's life science experienced and is helpful to companies locally that have questions and can be available for that type of thing. They did a wet lab infrastructure assessment. Wet lab has been identified as a deficiency locally, and they did a pretty significant assessment that kind of verified that and looked for some solutions. There are no easy solutions. It's a costly real estate investment, And there isn't a solution for it yet, but part of their work plan was to create that assessment. That's now available. A number of us have seen that report. They've also got an internship program. And they've run about 17 folks over 2 years through the internship program. And that is serving 52 companies. And they've also helped with attracting and or growing some existing companies through their advice and counsel as a dialogue. So they've been a good first group to support with respect to Go Virginia. They're very timely with the reporting and always give great updates. Some of you may recall a presentation from Nikki Hastings in the past, or potentially Martin Chapman, who was a founder of this initiative. So pretty good news there. That one's starting to wrap up. The Catalyst Accelerators, the second one, that will also wrap up later this year. That is an initiative that comes out of the university's Darden School and is run by David Tuvey, who's an expert in startups and entrepreneurship and has wanted to run this community accelerator. The Go Virginia grant enabled that to happen, and the city and county came alongside and provided some support. They have 18 companies in the program. It's a 9-month program, so it's a long form accelerator. They accept a variety of type of companies, but they have to be growth oriented. So not kind of a mom and pop Main Street business, but a business that's growth oriented in terms of its revenue and trajectory there. So they have a variety of tech and some bio type companies that have been accepted into that. It's been interesting to watch that process. They also have an internship program where they match interns either in undergrad or grad school with the companies to get experience and help for the companies. They have collected some data that shows their group of companies has added 6 employees. They've kept the existing employees they had. That number was about 16. And they've also raised some capital of almost $3 million across the companies during their time in the program. That's about the midway point for this data that now is collected. We've got the second half of data to collect over the next few months to wrap that up. But that's a little snapshot on Catalyst. So those are the 2 big ones that have been funded with Go Virginia dollars, and local match has been provided. The other one you'll hear about that we have not provided yet, but it's in the queue for, is a program called Venture Central, and that has been approved at the state level. That is just about to launch here, and that is a kind of a front door or focal point for entrepreneurship in the community. And the city and county have supported that, as well as the chamber and the university, and as well as Go Virginia. So that'll be the big one that kind of comes through the process in the next couple of years. But these original 2 are starting to wrap up. So with that, that was a lot of update there for those 3, but wanted to give you a sense of that since it's been a little while since we talked through those. So any questions on any of those that anybody would have? Okay. Well, Mr. Chair, we can move to the budget if you'd like, if there's no other questions.
Yes, let's move on.
Okay. So in your packet, you'll find towards the end the FY22 budget. So this is for fiscal year 22, starting July 1 of 21 and going 12 months to June 30 of 22. This budget, the format is similar, but this year is a little different given the COVID impact. So I'll spend a little time on that. So you're aware, in the revenue section, it accounted for only a half a year's payment on the pavilion loan. And you all recall, we had a request last year, and I expect one this year, having spoken with them already about their potential for restarting. They do intend to restart activities, but it's not going to be till at least mid to late year, probably August, September. So last year there was a deferral was made on their loan. whereby they did not have to make principal payments. Interest still did accrue. I'm guessing we're going to get that request again. So in terms of revenue expected this year, I've cut that down significantly, a little over 50% reduction, expecting that that is likely to happen and wanting to be realistic with what we could expect. Other revenues are all as expected and shouldn't see any issues there. You will know that typically in a year we would expect to have some funds left over, and you would see that if y'all are looking at the expenditure section, that would show up in project reserves, and that's where we would capture funds that would end up in our reserve account that we could use for an emergency or for some other opportunity that would arise. We're not projecting any reserves this year. In fact, we're projecting to pull out of reserves about 200,000, and that is to continue to lean into this pandemic and this recovery, which I'll talk a little bit about here in a minute with our recovery roadmap plan that we have about to launch, get underway. So we want to reserve some funds to be available to support that effort and kind of align with some of the programming that Jason spoke about earlier with the brace and the go higher. So requesting that we dip into reserves in this particular case for 200,000 to level out our budget and still allow us to provide some programming that we think will be beneficial. So down in the program section, you'll see that in a typical year, we would allow or allot 20,000 for an ACE program. We're requesting 100,000 this year to really ramp that up and be a key component of helping recover these businesses. And that would likely fall under the auspices of the brace component, which was building resiliency. So looking to create opportunities to help businesses that want to adapt their business model to be successful given the new normal that might be here based upon COVID. So we anticipate that being a significant piece of our recovery efforts, and having some funds available to do that would be prudent. I mentioned SEville match earlier, and the fact that the demand might be diminished given the situation. So we've reduced that amount, and basically you can see where we've allocated it either in the brace or ACE segment or down and go higher, which we've increased from 50,000 to 100,000, thinking that re-onboarding and hiring people as well as training existing folks and new components of the business would be useful for the city businesses. Go Virginia, we've kept level, given that we have some incoming commitments there with Intercentral. And a new category that's kind of unallocated, but a placeholder of 30,000 for just kind of general recovery planning, if you will. And that's to kind of address unknowns as they might materialize throughout the course of the year. A little tweak to marketing, knowing that we may have an additional need to do a little bit more in that regard. We've had a good conversation with the county about a buy local program, which we did with them over the holiday season. It was fairly successful and on a short time frame and a very small budget. So we're anticipating that we will likely spin up a year-long buy local program that will be jointly funded. So having some dollars for that would be useful. The other items are all largely as expected, no major changes in any of the other expenditure items. Those of you who follow governmental accounting, revenues and expenditures need to balance. So we have a balance there on the top and bottom side. So in a nutshell, that's an overview of what we're proposing for the 2022 fiscal year budget for the authority. Happy to pause there and answer any questions that anybody has.
Chris, can you remind me what the performance agreements indicate on the expenditure?
Yes, that's a good question, especially for those who are newer. We have a series of performance agreements. These are agreements, kind of three-party agreements between the city, the EDA, and a developer or a company. And these are pass-through dollars. So you see the revenue coming in at 260 and then going out at 260 as well. So the city provides those monies to us. The way we structure our performance agreements, they're based upon tax increment, real estate tax increment increase. So The way they are structured is that if the entity creates an increment above the value of the real estate taxes generated on the property as of the base date, if they create an increment, then they get a portion of that back. It's kind of it's an incentive, but it's a back-end incentive, so they don't get the money up front. They get the money after they perform, and after they actually pay their taxes, then we share a portion of that with them. We have a series of those. There's one big one remaining in here, and we just actually completed another one. The Friendship Court, Piedmont Housing Alliance, you might recall that. That was, we had conversation about that at November, December timeframe last year. That's the newest one that has been approved. That one has not gone into repayment, if you will, yet. So they actually have to create the investment, and then we have to verify that they meet the criteria, and then we start the repayment. These typically last 5 to 10 years in terms of the repayment piece. But that's what those, what that performance agreement line references, and that's past $3 from the city. Good question. Welcome, Adrian.
Sorry, I'm so late.
That's all right. That's all right. We're through the process here. Any other questions on the budget?
So on the training, I saw the training was reduced. Is that just because it'll be more online and less expensive, or less of it? Or?
If you look at the history on that, it looks a little odd. The truth of the matter is we never spent even anywhere close to $10,000 on training. At one point, that was a number that got used, and I think we lost track of how and why that might be there. So this, we think, is a little more realistic. And you know, new board members would typically go to a training. It was virtual the last time, so it cost a little less. And then there may be something that comes up. We do have some training obligations with regard to FOIA and COIA now. Those typically are low to no cost, but that's where that would hit if we were going to do something like that. So we think 2,000 is probably reasonable.
Any other questions?
All right.
So do I have a motion to accept the fiscal year 2022 budget as presented?
Sorry, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Passes.
All right.
We'll move on to other business.
Yeah, just a couple quick items to make you all aware of. Share screen real quick here. Just let's see. Is Jeremy still with us? Jeremy, are you there? Can you enable share screen for me?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. We'll just give him a minute there. Get that switch. All right, there we go. Okay. All right, you guys see my screen there? We have
Yes.
So this is our annual report. Typically, we would provide you a hard copy, but we're obviously not in person, so we've not printed hard copies, but we do have this available. You might have received a notice about it if you receive our news, which comes out every 2 weeks or so. But in any case, this is our annual report that we do on the calendar year, and there are references to the CETA programs in here. I'm not going to go through all of it here, but there's a welcome. And then here's where the SBRD and the Braves programs are all kind of referenced throughout. A little bit about our minority business program. If you haven't seen this, references to the business equity fund here. Centerfold this year was a housing relief program administered by our Home to Hope folks. A little bit more about Home to Hope and workforce partnerships. This page would reference Go Virginia, and Metro Central is referenced here, as well as Project Rebound, which is also a Go Virginia project last year. And that buy local program that I referenced a bit ago, talked about here, and I thought a little bit about parking. So I just wanted to show you guys that we will resend to you all a link for that if you haven't seen it, but typically we will provide that to you in hard copy, and just been able to do that this year. Hopefully that changes soon. And then the next item I wanted to show you real quick is our recovery planning effort, which you should now see a graphic that indicates recovery roadmap plan for businesses, business recovery in Charlottesville is what we're calling it. This is going to kick off next week. You all will get a personal invite if you haven't already. And we do hope that you'll, some of you will participate in one or more of the sessions. These are going to be virtually held via Zoom, and they will be facilitated by a facilitator with economic development experience. You see our team on there, myself and Jason, Zoe, Holly, will all be participating, as well as members of the business community. So we're looking for Charlottesville business owners to be participants in this. And the real point of this process is to have some engagement on what recovery looks like and what's helpful for the business community. We're looking for practical solutions that the city can actually engage in. And that could be a regulatory item, that could be a relief item with regard to a tax or a fee, or it could be a grant program or something we advocate for at the state level. It's hard to say. We don't want to prescribe exactly what that is. The point of these meetings is to find out what people think is going to be useful. So the first meetings are next week. There's two meetings, one on the 17th at 8:30, one on the 18th at 4. The format for both of those will be identical. So if you're able to make one, that'd be great. Make both for sure. We'll follow that up in 2 weeks with another kind of more in-depth in some topical areas that might be generated from this first meeting. And then we'll have a quiet period for 3 or 4 weeks while our consultant kind of helps craft the document, if you will, and then we'll come back and consider that and make sure everything can capture and do some wordsmithing and tweaking in the final document. But the goal is to, in pretty short order, about 2 months' time, come up with what we think are some reasonable initiatives that will help businesses recover. And we hope that you all will participate. As you saw in the budget we just approved, there's some funding for GRACE and funding to go higher. Those are 2 key pieces that we think will be part of this recovery. And then we have some of those unallocated dollars as well as local initiatives that we should consider. So we'll make sure you all have this. And like I said, if you're able to participate, a good sign to the business community that the UBA is engaged in supporting this. So those are the 2 items I wanted to cover. There are other business exist, but go ahead.
Any questions about that?
Hey, Chris, I've got a question about that. In the budget, that's budgeted for $30,000. If something larger comes out of that process, I'm assuming that could come out of the reserves that we have.
Yes, that's a good question, Jim. We've just kind of allocated that as a placeholder for now. But as members who were on last year remember, we had our regular meeting. I was sharing that earlier, that March meeting happened last year. It was the last in-person meeting we had. We then met again telephonically on March 30th, 2 weeks into this pandemic, and we hadn't quite figured out Zoom yet, so we had a good old-fashioned conference call. But we presented to you a resolution that was passed in short order that provided some emergency funding for the programs previously described. And that was, as Jason mentioned earlier, quite helpful to our businesses at that period of time. So, yes, if something larger comes up, there's always an opportunity to do a supplemental allocation at some point down the line. There's also a possibility that the city might engage with some dollars to support some of these items once the plan's put together. A good question. I'm glad you're thinking about it.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you all for being attentive and participating. We do appreciate it. I know it's challenging even to get on the Zoom call on a busy day sometimes. So we do appreciate you all being available and being part of this.
Is there any idea when there could be an in-person meeting?
Well, I know what I'd like to have one sooner than later, but we'll see. I think, I guess my personal perception of things is that they're starting to loosen up a little bit, and additional guidance is coming out for folks to get together. But officially, the city still has its emergency in place as does the state. So those things probably need to sunset before we talk of in-person meetings, official in-person meetings. We'll keep you up to date.
Okay. Any other business to talk about? Do I have a motion to adjourn
So moved.
in a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone.
Well,
See ya.
See you next time.